All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Lina Kahn. Lina is a writer and a policy analyst for the New America Foundation. Her work has appeared in the Washington Monthly, the New Republic, Mother Jones, and Salon. You can follow her on Twitter at Lina M. Kahn. Lina, thank you so much for being on the show.
Good to be here.
All right, so Lina, you recently wrote a really thought-provoking piece for Salon on the potential of the merging of big data and big farming. Tell us, how exactly do those two come together?
So agriculture, unlike many other industries, has until now been pretty insulated from the information age. But now it's kind of on the cusp of a technological revolution. So you're seeing more and more farming equipment that is now collecting data about a farmer's operation. So, when a farm is planting, his tractor can keep very intricate track of, where exactly he's planting, how deep he's planting, what the nutrients of the soil are. All of this information can now be collected very easily. And this kind of equipment has been around now for a little over a decade. But what's happening now is that the data analytics capabilities have advanced pretty extensively. So for a while, farmers just were collecting a lot of data, but didn't really know what to do with it. But now you have companies that are providing different kinds of software that let farmers theoretically make sense of that data and use it to farm more precisely. So, if a farmer finds that planting certain seeds 2 inches apart is better than planting them 2.2 inches apart, he can then use that theoretically to increase yield.
I mean, so in theory, using science and equipment to actually, try to improve farming and to actually make things more efficient and grow a better crop. In theory, that is a good thing and a positive thing, and being able to use science to its capabilities to actually, make a better yield and have a long-term, better farming is a positive thing. But this is where it starts to get a little tricky then, because, so let's talk a little bit about the companies that are coming up with the actual software and how that actually works.
Sure. So it's important to note that it's not like any of this just happened yesterday. So many of these trends have been happening for the last decade. You've had a lot of really innovative small startups producing a lot of both the equipment and the software. What's happening now, though, is that some of the big companies are recognizing that the technology has progressed to a point where it's going to be pretty profitable. So you're seeing companies like Monsanto, like DuPont, Deere, really roll out more and more of these technologies, and in some cases actually just buy up some of the companies that are doing it. So over the last couple of years, we've seen Monsanto buy up two tech companies, Precision Planting and the Climate Corporation, which is a data analytics firm that was basically just started up in Silicon Valley. So that's really what's changing now, is that you're seeing some of the biggest players in agriculture now move aggressively into data analytics and what they called precision farming.
And some of this actually has to do with the way they're also setting up. Let's discuss how some of this data is being collected. And so let's just say theoretically, farmer A gets a piece of equipment that reads the soil and gives them all this type of data. They get this data, and so the software they buy theoretically is owned by Monsanto, and so that data somehow goes up to a cloud. How exactly would this actually work, and what are this like? So how would actually, let's start with that. How does this work now?
Sure. Exactly. So one important difference now is that farmers are less certain about who owns their information. So up until now, when farmers had been, rolling out some of these really cool tractors and combines that had computers in them, all the data would just be on the equipment, and they would use a USB to physically take it out. And then if they wanted to share it with somebody, they would physically hand it over. What's happening now is, because all of this equipment can now very easily be connected to the cloud, all that information can be sent up to these companies without farmers necessarily even knowing. So that's one of the biggest issues right now, and it's something that's being sorted out by a lot of farm bureaus around the country. It's important to know that a lot of it is really murky. One of the interesting things was, when I was reporting this story, people had vastly different answers when you ask them, okay, so, who owns the information that's being collected? A lot of the times companies will come out and say, oh, it is the farmer who owns it. But then when you start kind of probing what that means, it gets a little bit murkier. So I think one of the biggest issues right now is that farmers are not entirely sure that once the equipment collects the information, who owns that information. The other issue is also about kind of whether the information will only be able to be accessed through proprietary software. So say, you buy a piece of hardware from Precision Planting, which is now owned by Monsanto, will you also have to then use Monsanto's data analytics? And this is kind of an issue that we see, across the board in all sorts of technology. This is the kind of thing that Microsoft was accused of, using its monopoly in kind of one sector to try and get a monopoly in the browser market. So this kind of attempt to use your existing monopoly to expand into other lines of business is something that I think farmers are worried Monsanto might try to do.
Well, I mean, I think farmers are rightfully, they're very right to be concerned about what Monsanto can do, seeing what Monsanto has done to small farmers, be it with their proprietary seeds, be it with their all the lawsuits. If a seed somehow goes over a farmer's line, that these farmers have to do, what Monsanto has done to the farming industry is fairly well documented, and I think the fact that they're getting into data, farmers are very right to be concerned here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I was doing a lot of this reporting alongside the big debate around, the NSA collecting all our data and the privacy questions, should we care, should we not care? And in many ways, I found that farmers are actually very savvy about, knowing exactly what the issues are. One of the big differences between how Google and Facebook collect our information and how Monsanto is collecting our information is, if Facebook knows that I've been looking to buy boots, for the most part, the most it can do is shower me with ads for boots.
Right.
When Monsanto knows that, how a farmer is running his farm, that is really sensitive business information. And especially given the fact that these farmers are often doing business with Monsanto, it creates all these asymmetries in that business relationship. So there is an important difference in kind of how we're all used to, for the most part, engaging with data collection and how farmers are now worried that the data could be used.